Why was everyone staring at her sleeve? The dining facility at Forward Operating Base Archer buzzed with familiar sounds. Generators hummed. Metal trays clattered. Boots scraped concrete. Tired voices traded stories from the wire. It was the soundtrack of war in its downtime, the mundane machinery of survival between the chaos. Staff Sergeant Eva Rostova moved through the chow line like a shadow passing through light, invisible, practiced. Her movements were efficient, almost mechanical. Rice, grilled chicken, water bottle, nothing more. Nothing less. She found an empty table in the corner, away from the loud clusters of infantry and the self-important circles of staff officers. She sat with her back to the wall, always the wall. It was a habit born of profession, not paranoia. A reflex coded into muscle memory by years of training and tour that blurred together like pages in a worn book. She was halfway through her meal when the shadow fell across her table. Large, imposing, smelling of expensive cologne and authority. Brigadier General Marcus Thorne, commander of the sector, master of this dusty kingdom. He stood over her, flanked by his aide and a stern-faced colonel. His chest was a billboard of ribbons and badges, a testament to a long career spent climbing ladders, shaking hands, playing the game. His eyes, sharp and predatory, fixed on something small, something on her right sleeve. A dark circular patch, a stylized phoenix rising from static or flames, embroidered beneath it Latin words, fides in tenebris, faith in darkness. The low hum of conversation began to falter. Heads turned, forks paused midair. The general's voice cut through the room like a blade through fabric. "Staff Sergeant, I don't recognize that piece of flair you're wearing." Eva finished chewing a piece of chicken. She swallowed, placed her fork down neatly beside her plate, looked up at him. Her expression was unreadable, a mask carved from stone. "It's a unit insignia, General." "A unit insignia," Thorne repeated. A smirk played on his lips, cruel, dismissive. He leaned forward, bracing his hands on her small table. The table wobbled. "I'm familiar with every authorized unit patch in this theater, every single one. That little bird of yours isn't on the list. Looks like something you bought on the internet." The colonel beside him chuckled dutifully. "Probably from one of those tactical lifestyle brands, sir." Laughter rippled through nearby tables. Eva's gaze remained steady, unwavering. "It was issued, sir." The smirk vanished. Irritation flashed across Thorne's face. He saw a small woman, barely 5.5 feet tall, uniform a size too big. He saw silence and assumed timidity. He saw a female face in a sniper-qualified role and assumed a quota had been met. He saw weakness where there was only profound stillness. "Issued by who?" "Captain Crunch." More laughter now. Louder. "Emboldened by rank." "You think you can walk around my forward operating base wearing unauthorized decorations? You think the rules don't apply to you?" His voice rose with each question, drawing every eye. The clatter of cutlery ceased entirely. Only his indignation remained, and the distant drone of a surveillance aircraft overhead. "The insignia is authorized for my parent unit, General." Her tone was flat, even like a firing range on a calm day. "And what unit is that?" Thorne demanded, straightening up and crossing his arms. "Let me guess. The 1st Fictional Battalion, the Secret Squirrels." Laughter again, cruel and quick. "Take it off. Now." He pointed a thick finger at her sleeve. Eva did not move. Her hands remained resting on the table, one on each side of her tray. She did not blink, did not flinch. "I am not authorized to remove it, sir." The general's face flushed a deep, mottled red. It was a public challenge, an act of insubordination in front of half the base, in front of witnesses, in front of cameras, his authority questioned by a staff sergeant, a woman. "You are not authorized." His voice was ice now, controlled fury. "Staff Sergeant, you are a guest here. Your team is attached to my command, which means you fall under my authority. I am giving you a direct order. Remove that ridiculous patch or I will have the military police escort you to the stockade for disobeying a lawful order from a general officer. Is that clear?" The silence in the room was absolute now, heavy, suffocating. Every soldier, every officer watched, waiting for the inevitable collapse. They saw a lone staff sergeant being crushed by the institutional weight of a one-star general. They saw the ending before it happened. She would bend, she would break, she would apologize, she would remove the patch. Because that's what happened when generals spoke. That's how the world worked. Eva slowly picked up her bottle of water, unscrewed the cap, took a small sip, screwed it back on with deliberate precision. She looked past the general. Her eyes scanned the room for a moment, noting locations, exit routes, security cameras. One was positioned perfectly over the exit with a clear view of their table, perfect angle, perfect witness. She met Thorne's furious gaze again. Her voice, when she spoke, was no louder than before, yet it carried across the silent hall. "Understood, sir." She did not reach for her sleeve. Instead, she stood, picked up her tray, walked to the disposal window, scraped her plate clean, placed the tray on the rack, and walked out of the dining facility without a backward glance. She left the general standing there, his order hanging unfulfilled in the thick, stunned air. He was left with a choice: escalate further and look like a bully, or let it go and look weak. Neither option tasted good. He chose to fume. "Get her service record," he barked at the colonel. "I want to know who the hell she thinks she is." Eva walked back to the small, windowless room that served as her team's workspace. The air inside was cool, smelled of ozone from the servers. Banks of monitors glowed in the darkness like artificial constellations. Her partner, Sergeant First Class Ben Carter, looked up from his terminal. He had a face like a road map. Every line told a story. He'd heard about the dining facility already. Bad news traveled at the speed of light on a forward operating base. "Heard you met the landlord," Carter said, his voice low and careful. Eva said nothing. She sat down at her station, powered on the monitor, opened a new encrypted file, a standard incident report form. She began to type. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency. Date, time, location, subject. She detailed the conversation verbatim, a feat of memory that would have astonished anyone who didn't know her. She listed General Thorne, Colonel Davies, and herself as personnel involved. She noted the presence of approximately 150 witnesses. She noted the location of Camera 7, direct line of sight. She described the order given, her response. She did not characterize the general's tone, did not mention intent, did not describe her own feelings, because there were none to mention. There was only data. The interaction was a data point. The general's emotional response was a variable. Her own calm was a control. She finished the report, encrypted it, saved it to a secure server accessible only by her unit's operational command. Thousands of miles away, safe, documented. She did not send it, she simply filed it, a piece of proof. Waiting, chain of custody mattered, evidence mattered, truth when recorded became armor. With the report filed, she turned to another screen. This one displayed a complex waterfall of radio frequency signals, a chaotic spectrum of noise harvested from the valley below. She put on a pair of high-fidelity headphones, closed her eyes, let the patterns flow over her. She was not just looking at the data, she was listening to it, feeling it. To everyone else it was static, white noise, meaningless chaos. To her it was a language. She could discern the unique digital fingerprints of different enemy radio models, the subtle frequency-hopping algorithms they used, the latency in their network that betrayed the location of their command nodes. This was her true domain, the world of signals and whispers, of ghosts in the machine. The incident in the dining facility was already a distant echo, a brief, irrelevant spike in a sea of otherwise meaningful noise. She spent the next 3 hours in that chair, motionless, except for the occasional minute adjustment of a filter on her terminal. She was mapping the enemy's communications network, not by its content but by its behavior, tracing digital shadows, building a picture of their command structure one packet at a time. It was meticulous work, painstaking. Required a level of concentration most people couldn't sustain for 5 minutes. Eva could do it for days. "You're not even a little pissed off?" Carter finally asked, breaking the silence. Eva didn't look away from her screen. "Why would I be?" "Because a general just tried to humiliate you in front of the entire base." "He tried," Eva said quietly. He didn't succeed. Carter shook his head. You know he's going to come after you. His ego won't let this go. Then he'll come after me. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. The patch stays. And if he locks you up, then he locks me up. She adjusted a frequency filter. A pattern emerged from the noise, beautiful, mathematical. But he'll have to explain why he imprisoned a soldier for wearing an authorized unit insignia, and someone will ask to see my service record, and then other questions will be asked, questions he won't want to answer. Carter smiled despite himself. You're playing chess while he's playing checkers. I'm not playing anything, Ben. I'm doing my job. He's the one who decided to make it personal. Still, most people would be shaken. Eva finally looked at him. Her eyes were dark, calm, like deep water. I've been shot at by people who actually knew what they were doing. A general throwing a tantrum doesn't even register. She turned back to her screen. Besides, I have work to do. There's chatter in the valley, something's building. What she was tracking would soon become more important than any general's bruised ego. But what was happening in the valley that had her so focused? For the next 72 hours, Eva barely left her chair. She ate MREs without tasting them, slept in 20-minute intervals. Her world narrowed to the data streaming across her monitors. The enemy's communications network was evolving, adapting. Someone new was coordinating their movements. Someone disciplined, someone dangerous. The local insurgents were disorganized by nature, tribal, fractured by old feuds and competing interests. But now, suddenly, their radio traffic showed coordination, timing, purpose. Units that had never worked together were now moving in concert, establishing overlapping fields of fire, setting up fallback positions. This wasn't the work of a local militia leader. This was professional, military-grade planning. They're preparing for something big, Eva said, her voice rough from lack of sleep. Carter leaned over her shoulder, studying the frequency analysis she'd compiled. An attack. More than that, look at the positioning. She overlaid a topographic map with the signal sources she'd triangulated. Red dots scattered across the valley like drops of blood. They're not staging near any of our patrol routes. They're clustering here, along the main supply route, the one the convoy uses. Carter's expression darkened. When's the next convoy? 36 hours. We need to brief command. Eva was already compiling her report, screenshots, signal analysis, predictive models. She worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times before, because she had. In Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, places that didn't appear on any official deployment roster, places where small teams went to solve problems quietly, where the rules were different and the work never made the news. 20 minutes later, they were in the operations center, a large room filled with monitors, maps, and the controlled chaos of a forward operating base managing multiple active operations. General Thorne stood at the center, surrounded by his staff. His expression soured when he saw Eva enter. "This better be good, Staff Sergeant," he said coldly. Eva approached the main display, plugged in her tablet. Her analysis appeared on the screen. "Sir, we've identified a pattern in enemy communications indicating a coordinated attack is imminent. Primary target is likely the supply convoy scheduled to depart in 36 hours. Colonel Davies scoffed. "We get threat assessments every week. What makes this different?" "The coordination level," Eva replied. She pulled up a series of signal graphs. For the past 6 months, enemy radio traffic has been chaotic. Multiple frequencies, poor operational security, standard militia behavior. 3 days ago, that changed. They've consolidated under a single command structure. They're using encrypted burst transmissions, military-grade frequency hopping, and they've stopped talking about the attack entirely." "Stop talking," Thorne frowned. "Sounds like you lost your signal." "No, sir, they went dark on purpose. Radio silence before an operation, that's discipline, that's training." She zoomed in on the map. "But their positioning gives them away. 17 distinct transmission sources, all within a 3-kilometer radius of this choke point. That's not random. They're staged, waiting. The room fell quiet. Officers leaned closer to the displays. Carter added, "She's triangulated the signals using atmospheric conditions and multipath interference analysis. The positions are accurate to within 50 meters." General Thorne studied the map. His jaw worked. He didn't want to give her credit, but he also didn't want to ignore a credible threat. "What's your assessment of the enemy force?" "Based on signal density and transmission patterns, I estimate 40 to 60 combatants, at least one experienced commander, possibly foreign. The radio discipline suggests prior military training. They'll likely use a layered ambush, IEDs to disable lead vehicles, small arms and RPGs from elevated positions, and an escape route here." She highlighted a wadi that wound back into the mountains. "They'll hit hard and withdraw before reinforcements arrive." "You got all that from radio signals?" Davies asked skeptically. "I got all that from patterns, sir. The signals are just data, but data tells stories if you know how to read them." Thorne was silent for a long moment. Pride warred with pragmatism in his expression. Finally, pragmatism won. "Recommendations. Delay the convoy. Send a strike package to clear the ambush site, or reroute entirely. Delaying the convoy puts us behind schedule. Rerouting adds 8 hours to the transit time. And sending a strike package based on radio triangulation is a hard sell without visual confirmation." Eva had expected this. "Then let me provide visual confirmation, sir. Give me 48 hours. I'll find their commander. I'll get you eyes on target. And I'll give you proof solid enough to brief up the chain." Thorne studied her, really looked at her for the first time since the dining facility incident. He saw something there he hadn't noticed before. Not defiance, not arrogance, just absolute, unshakable confidence. The kind that came from doing impossible things so many times they became routine. 48 hours, he said finally. "But you're not going alone. Take Carter and coordinate with Captain Miller's team. And Staff Sergeant," he paused, "don't make me regret this." Eva nodded once. "You won't, sir." She turned and walked out. Carter followed. In the hallway, he let out a breath he'd been holding. That was diplomatic. "I don't need him to like me, Ben. I just need him to listen." "Think you can find their commander in 48 hours?" Eva was already moving toward their workspace. "I don't have to find him. He'll find me. Leaders like to check on their troops before an operation. He'll transmit. And when he does, I'll be listening." What she didn't say, what she kept to herself, was that she'd already identified 3 likely locations for the enemy commander. She'd spent the last 72 hours not just tracking signals, but building a psychological profile. Where would a professional soldier position himself before a major operation, close enough to maintain command and control, far enough to stay safe? High ground for observation, access to escape routes. She'd narrowed it down. Now she just needed confirmation. And confirmation always came. People were predictable, especially soldiers. They followed patterns, procedures, habits carved into them by training. She would find him, and when she did, the general would have his proof. How do you find a ghost who doesn't want to be found? The observation post was a miserable place. A shallow depression carved into a rocky hillside overlooking the valley. No shade, no comfort, just rocks, thorny brush, and the relentless sun that turned the air into a furnace. Eva and Carter had hiked in before dawn, carrying their equipment, their water, enough supplies to last 3 days if necessary. They'd spent hours camouflaging the position, using local vegetation, breaking up the outline of their gear, creating a hide so effective that someone could walk within 10 feet and never know they were there. Now they waited. Eva lay prone behind her rifle, a custom M2010 chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum, suppressed, painted in desert patterns that matched the terrain. Beside her, Carter manned the spotting scope and thermal imaging equipment. Their packs contained electronic warfare devices, signal interceptors, Everything they needed to find one man in thousands of square kilometers of hostile territory. Position 3, Eva murmured. The bunker complex. Carter adjusted the spotting scope. 2 kilometers away, cut into the mountainside, a series of reinforced positions were barely visible. Camouflage netting, sandbagged walls, fighting positions that overlooked the supply route. I count 8 hostiles. No, wait, 10. 2 more just came out of the cave entrance. Eva watched through her rifle scope. She wasn't looking at the soldiers. She was studying the position itself. The layout, the fields of fire, the approach routes, professional work. Whoever planned this knew what they were doing. Any command elements? Negative, just security and fighters. No radios visible. They'd been watching for 6 hours. Position 1 had been empty. Position 2 contained only a small patrol base with 5 fighters who spent most of their time sleeping. This third location was more promising. More soldiers, better fortifications, but still no sign of the commander Eva was hunting. She shifted slightly, her back ached. Her mouth was dry despite the water she'd been rationing. The heat was oppressive. It pressed down like a physical weight. She ignored it. Pain was just sensation, discomfort was just data. She'd learned long ago to file it away, to function despite it. The body wanted many things: comfort, rest, relief. But the mind could override those demands. The mission was all that mattered. Movement, Carter said suddenly. Southwest corner, vehicle approaching. Eva tracked left. A technical truck appeared on the winding road below. Mounted machine gun in the bed, 4 occupants. It climbed toward the bunker complex, dust trailing behind it like a tan ribbon. The vehicle stopped outside the main entrance. 3 men dismounted, 2 fighters and someone else. Someone who carried himself differently. Older, confident. The fighters deferred to him, created space, waited for his approval. That's him, Eva said quietly. Carter studied the man through the scope. How can you tell? Body language, the others orient toward him. Watch their postures, they're waiting for direction, and look at his gear, it's different, cleaner, better maintained, he's not local. The man disappeared into the bunker. Minutes passed. Then his radio crackled to life. Eva had her electronic surveillance equipment active, headphones on. She listened as the enemy commander transmitted. His voice was calm, authoritative, giving instructions in Arabic. Carter recorded the transmission while Eva translated mentally. It was an operational briefing, confirming positions, verifying timing. The attack would happen when the convoy entered the kill zone, not before. Discipline. Fire superiority, controlled withdrawal, textbook ambush doctrine. The transmission lasted 90 seconds, then silence. The commander emerged from the bunker, walked back to the technical, departed the way he'd come. Eva lowered her rifle. I know where he's going. Where? She pulled out a tablet, displayed the map she'd been building. He's visiting his positions, checking readiness. 3 stops minimum, maybe 4. He started at the southern positions yesterday. That's where we picked up his first transmission. Today he's here in the center. Tomorrow he'll check the northern positions, and then, she zoomed in on a specific location. He'll return to his command post. Here, this compound. It has line of sight to the entire kill zone, hardened construction. Multiple escape routes. It's where I would set up if I were running this operation. Carter studied the compound through satellite imagery. It looked ancient. Stone walls, courtyard, built into the mountainside. That's almost 2,000 meters from any position we can shoot from. 1,974 meters, Eva corrected. From that ridge. She indicated a rocky outcrop across the valley. Wind will be variable, thermals rising from the valley floor. But there's a 3-hour window in early morning when conditions stabilize. If he follows pattern, he'll be there at dawn, checking preparations one final time before they execute. You want to take the shot. I want to stop the ambush. This is the most efficient way. She was already calculating. Range, elevation, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure. The ballistic solution was complex but solvable. Everything was solvable with enough data. We report this to command. They'll want confirmation, visual proof. Tomorrow morning we'll have it, and we'll have a solution to their problem. They climbed down from the observation post as darkness fell, moved carefully, silently. Eva had memorized the terrain during daylight. Now she navigated by memory and feel, every rock, every depression, every patch of loose gravel that might shift underfoot and make noise. Carter followed her lead, trusting her completely. They'd worked together for 3 years. She'd saved his life twice, once in Mosul, once in Syria. He'd stopped counting how many times her intelligence had kept their team out of ambushes. Back at the forward operating base, they briefed General Thorne. Eva presented her findings with clinical precision. The command structure she'd mapped, the enemy positions, the timing, the identity of the commander. She even had a name now. The engineer, a Syrian national with Russian training, experienced in complex ambushes, responsible for over 40 coalition deaths in the past 2 years. High-value target. One the intelligence community had been hunting for months. Thorne listened without interruption. When she finished, he asked, confidence level. 90% he's there. 100% the ambush is real. And you can make this shot. Eva's expression didn't change. Yes, sir. It's almost 2,000 meters, in variable wind, with thermals, he trailed off. He wanted to say impossible, but the woman standing before him didn't deal in impossibilities, only probabilities, and she seemed very certain about this one. I'll need electronic warfare support, Eva said. The compound has security systems, cameras, sensors. I can blind them for 300 milliseconds. That's enough time to take the shot and mask our position. 300 milliseconds, Davies repeated. That's a third of a second. That's all I need, sir. The general made his decision. You're authorized, but I want real-time feed. I want to watch this happen. And if you miss, we abort and I'm pulling your team off this base. Clear. Clear, sir. She hadn't come this far to miss. The phoenix on her sleeve meant something. It meant she'd risen from situations that would have buried anyone else. It meant she'd earned her place through blood, sweat, and the kind of determination that didn't accept failure as an option. Tomorrow morning she would prove it, not for the general, not for her career, but because 40 soldiers in that convoy were counting on her. They didn't know it yet, but their lives depended on a shot no one thought could be made. And Eva Rostova had built a career on doing what no one thought possible. Could one bullet really stop an entire ambush? The ridge was colder than expected, pre-dawn cold that seeped through layers and settled in the bones. Eva and Carter had reached the position 4 hours before sunrise, hiking through darkness, using night vision, moving slowly, carefully. They'd prepared the shooting position with meticulous care, a natural depression between 2 rock formations, cleared of loose stones, a stable platform for the rifle bipod, camouflage netting overhead to break up their silhouette. They'd even brought sand-filled bags to create a stable rest. Eva lay prone, perfectly still, her rifle positioned, her body aligned. The M2010 was an extension of her will, every part of it tuned, zeroed, trusted. She'd fired over 10,000 rounds through this weapon, knew its personality, its quirks, the way it recoiled, the way the trigger broke, clean, crisp, predictable. Beside her, Carter manned the spotting scope, a high-powered optic that let him see what she saw. Their communication would be minimal, hand signals, whispers. Radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Range to target, Carter asked softly. 1,974 meters. Eva's voice was barely audible. Elevation angle 12 degrees, wind from the northeast, variable between 8 and 12 knots at the firing position. Thermals are the problem. She explained without being asked, because Carter needed to understand. The valley below was heating up as the sun rose, warm air rising, creating a river of heat that would push her bullet off course. Conventional wisdom said you couldn't predict it, couldn't compensate for something so chaotic and random. But Eva had spent years studying this phenomenon, had developed models, mathematical frameworks. She understood that chaos had patterns. You just needed enough data to see them. Temperature gradient is increasing, she continued. We have a thermal boundary layer forming at approximately 800 meters downrange. The bullet will encounter a significant density differential. Trajectory will curve. Not much, maybe 8 inches, but at this range, 8 inches is the difference between center mass and a miss. Carter had seen her make impossible shots before, but this was different. The conditions, the range, the stakes. When's the window? Soon, the thermals follow a cycle. They rise, peak. Then there's a brief period where they stabilize before the next cycle. Maybe 3 minutes, maybe less. We wait for the peak, then shoot as they stabilize. They waited. The sky lightened from black to deep blue to pale orange. The valley below emerged from shadow. She could see the compound now. Stone walls, courtyard, a guard walking the perimeter. No sign yet of the target, but he would come. Leaders always inspected their preparations before an operation. It was ritual, habit, the need to confirm with their own eyes that everything was ready. Minutes crawled by. Eva's breathing was slow, controlled. Her heart rate was 55 beats per minute, resting level, the product of years of training, meditation, biofeedback. She'd learned to control her body's responses, to remain calm when adrenaline wanted to flood her system, to keep her hands steady when they wanted to shake. Through her scope, the compound appeared close enough to touch. She could see details, cracks in the stone, shadows in the windows, a dog sleeping in the courtyard. Movement, Carter whispered. North entrance. The door opened. 3 men emerged, 2 guards and him, the engineer, tall, bearded, wearing a tactical vest and carrying a radio. He walked into the courtyard, paused, looked out over the valley, studying his kill zone, probably imagining the convoy entering. The first vehicle hitting the IED, the chaos that would follow, the screams, the fire. He was planning murder, calculating it, taking pride in his preparation. Eva watched him through her scope. The crosshairs rested on his chest. Center mass, the ethical target. She felt nothing, no anger, no satisfaction, just focus. The target was a problem, she was the solution, that was all. Range confirmed, Carter said. 1974 meters. Wind has stabilized, 8 knots northeast. Thermals are cycling, peak in 30 seconds. Eva made final adjustments. Elevation, windage. She'd calculated the ballistic solution yesterday, but calculations were theoretical. Real shooting required intuition, feel. She watched the heat shimmer above the valley, the air dancing, the thermal vortex reaching its peak, then beginning to calm, the river of heat slowing, becoming smooth, like turbulent water settling into a gentle flow. Vortex is peaking, Carter said, tension in his voice. 10 seconds. Eva's left thumb moved to a small device attached to her rifle, an electronic warfare tool, programmed with a very specific hack. She'd spent 6 hours writing the code, a polymorphic burst that would trick the compound security system into seeing nothing but friendly signals. 300 milliseconds. That's all the window she had, because after that the system would reset. Alarms would sound, and the target would disappear. Vortex stabilizing, Carter said. Window opening now. Eva pressed the button, the hack executed. In the compound, cameras froze, motion sensors went blind. For a third of a second, the digital eyes went dark. Simultaneously, Eva's lungs exhaled half their air. Her world contracted, the scope, the target, the trigger, nothing else existed. No cold, no fear, no doubt, just the target and the path to reach him. She applied pressure to the trigger, smooth, steady. The rifle fired. The recoil was familiar, a controlled push against her shoulder. The suppressor dampened the sound to a sharp crack, still loud, but not the thunderous boom of an unsuppressed rifle. The bullet left the muzzle at nearly 3,000 feet per second, spinning, stabilized by the rifling. It was now an autonomous entity governed by physics. Gravity would pull it down, wind would push it sideways, air density would slow it, and the thermals would curve its path, but Eva had accounted for all of it. The math was perfect, the execution was perfect, now it was just time and distance. 2.6 seconds, that's how long the bullet flew. Carter watched through his scope, counting silently, tracking the target. He saw the engineer standing there, unaware, oblivious, confident in his preparation. Then the bullet arrived, moving so fast it was invisible, carrying enough energy to punch through body armor, through bone, through will itself. The engineer collapsed. Instantly, his nervous system shut down before his brain could process what happened. One moment standing, the next gone. No drama, no slow-motion death scene, just cause and effect, physics applied with lethal precision. "Impact," Carter said, his voice carrying awe. "Target down, he's down." In the operations center back at the base, General Thorne stood frozen. He'd been watching the live feed. A satellite had been repositioned for this shot, giving him real-time imagery. He'd seen the target, seen him standing, then seen him fall, at almost 2,000 meters, in variable wind, with thermal interference. An impossible shot made possible by a woman he'd tried to humiliate days before. The room erupted in cheers. Officers and analysts who'd been holding their breath now released it. Backslaps, high fives, the kind of celebration that came from witnessing something extraordinary. Thorne didn't celebrate, he just stared at the screen, at the red icon that had marked a high-value target, the icon that was now gone, removed from the battlefield by one bullet, by one soldier, by one decision to trust the small, quiet woman in the corner who never raised her voice. He thought about the dining facility, the patch, his arrogance, his assumptions. He'd seen her silence and called it weakness. He'd seen her stillness and called it inadequacy. He'd been wrong, completely, utterly. Dangerously wrong. Eva didn't watch the impact. Her job was already done. She was cycling the bolt, ejecting the spent casing, chambering a new round, scanning for other threats, because that's what professionals did. They didn't celebrate. They stayed ready, stayed vigilant. The mission wasn't over until they were back at base, until the convoy rolled through safely, until the evidence was collected and the reports were filed. "We need to move," she said quietly. "Enemy will investigate. We have maybe 20 minutes." They broke down the position, packed their gear, moved quickly but carefully back down the ridge. Behind them, the compound erupted into chaos, guards running, radios crackling, but there was no direction now, no commander to coordinate, no engineer to give orders, just confusion and fear. The ambush would be discovered. 40 to 60 fighters waiting in positions that would never be used, waiting for orders that would never come. Without leadership, they would melt away, disappear back into the mountains. The convoy would pass through unmolested. 40 soldiers would reach their destination alive. They would never know how close they came, never know about the shot that saved them. That was fine with Eva. She didn't need recognition, didn't need thanks. The work was its own reward. The knowledge that she'd done her job, done it well, done it when it mattered most, that was enough. That had always been enough. What happens when silence proves louder than shouting? The debriefing room was sterile, windowless, designed for classified discussions. General Thorne sat at the head of the long table, Colonel Davies beside him, Captain Miller across from them. Eva and Carter stood at ease by the door, not sitting, not invited to sit, still outsiders, still attachments, still guests in someone else's war. The mood was somber, formal. The euphoria from the operations center had evaporated, replaced by the reality of what had just happened. Thorne cleared his throat. He looked uncomfortable, stiff, like a man forced to eat his words and finding them bitter. The after-action report confirms successful neutralization of the high-value target known as the engineer. The planned attack on the supply route has been averted. Our convoy passed through the area 3 hours ago without incident. Enemy fighters were observed abandoning their positions. This was a significant victory for this command. He paused. The words were coming hard, like pulling teeth. The success of this operation was due to the intelligence gathering and precision marksmanship of Staff Sergeant Rostova. The shot taken at 1974 meters, under extreme environmental conditions, is among the longest confirmed kills in modern combat history. Carter allowed himself a small smile. Eva's expression didn't change. She stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, eyes forward, waiting for whatever came next. Thorne picked up a file folder, the same one he'd requested days ago, the one that was supposed to expose her, prove she was a fraud. Show everyone that the patch was stolen, the credentials fake, the whole thing an act. Instead, it had shown him something else entirely. Also made inquiries about Staff Sergeant Rostova's background. His voice was quieter now, almost subdued. It seems her parent unit is the 75th Special Projects Group, a Tier 1 asset specializing in long-range interdiction and electronic warfare. Most of her operational history is redacted, black, completely inaccessible to anyone below Joint Chiefs level. He looked down at the file. But the commendations are not redacted. Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor device, 2 Purple Hearts, Army Commendation Medal with Valor, and a list of specialized qualifications that reads like something out of a recruitment fantasy. He listed them: Sniper School, Advanced Urban Warfare, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape Training, High Altitude, Low Opening Parachute Operations, Combat Diver Qualification, Multiple Language Certifications, Electronic Warfare Specialist, and on and on. A career that would have been impressive spread across 20 years, but Eva's file showed she'd accomplished it in 8. 8 years of constant deployment, constant training, constant pushing beyond what anyone thought possible. Colonel Davies stared at the table. His face was pale, resentful. He'd laughed in the dining facility, called her patch internet garbage. Now he knew what it really meant, what she really was. Captain Miller just looked impressed, proud even. His team had been supporting her, providing logistics and security. He'd known she was competent, but this was something else. Thorne closed the file. He slid a single piece of paper across the table. I also inquired about the insignia, the Phoenix patch. He nodded toward Captain Miller. Read it. Miller picked up the paper. It was an official memorandum. Heavy paper, official seal. The kind of document that carried weight. He read aloud, his voice clear and formal. The Phoenix emblem, designated *fides in tenebris *, is authorized for wear only by operational members of Task Force Trident. Its wearers are not subject to local uniform regulations regarding insignia. All inquiries into the task force are to be directed to the undersigned. He looked at the signature, paused. It's signed by a 4-star general at the Pentagon, Office of Special Operations. Task Force Trident. The name hung in the air. Those who knew it said nothing. Those who didn't wouldn't remember hearing it. It was a unit that officially didn't exist. A phantom organization that solved problems no one else could handle. The kind of problems that happened in the dark, that never made the news, that were wiped from official records. The Phoenix wasn't just a patch. It was a warning, a statement. It meant you were in the presence of someone who operated on a different plane, under different rules, with different accountability. Thorne stood up. His movement was stiff, awkward. He walked over to Eva, stopped in front of her. For a long moment he just looked at her, really looked, seeing her perhaps for the first time, not as a small woman in an oversized uniform, not as a quota hire or a guest or an annoyance, but as what she actually was, a weapon, honed by years of training and deployments that would have broken most men, a professional operating at a level he couldn't comprehend. He reached up, unpinned the combat infantryman badge from his own uniform, the blue rectangle with a silver rifle, a decoration he'd worn proudly for 20 years. Then he did something unexpected. He reached out and touched the Phoenix patch on her sleeve. His fingers barely brushed the embroidered fabric. It was an acknowledgement, a concession, an apology made without words. My comments in the dining facility were in error, he said quietly. His voice had lost its command presence, become almost human. They were not befitting an officer of my rank. They will not be repeated. Then he stepped back and saluted, a slow, formal salute. From a general officer to a staff sergeant, it was shocking, unprecedented, the kind of gesture that violated every protocol in the book, but in that room it felt right, felt earned, felt necessary. Colonel Davies stood, his face still pale but his back straight. He rendered his own salute. Then Captain Miller. Then every other officer present. A room full of salutes directed at a woman who had asked for nothing, who had demanded nothing, who had simply done her job with such extraordinary skill that she'd forced the system to acknowledge her. Eva returned the salute. One crisp, perfect motion. Her face showed no triumph, no satisfaction, no emotion at all, just the calm professionalism that defined her. The institutional correction was complete. The public humiliation in the dining facility had been answered by public recognition. The scales had balanced, not through argument, not through appeal, but through proof. Undeniable, irrefutable, devastating proof delivered at nearly 2,000 meters. The debriefing ended. Officers filed out. Eva and Carter remained. Thorne approached them once more, this time without the entourage, without the performance, just a tired general who'd learned something about assumptions. "I owe you more than an apology, Staff Sergeant." "No, sir, you don't. I question your professionalism, your credentials, your right to wear that patch." "You did, sir." Her voice was neutral, stating fact. "But you also authorized the mission. You listened to my intelligence assessment. You gave me the resources I needed. That matters more than words spoken in a dining facility." Thorne nodded slowly. "You could have made me look like a fool. You filed that incident report. It's documented, witnessed, on camera. You could ruin my career." "I filed it because documentation matters, sir. Chain of custody, evidence, truth. Not because I wanted leverage." She paused. "The report stays sealed unless someone questions my service again. Then it becomes relevant. Until then, it's just a file." It was a kindness, more grace than he deserved. They both knew it. "Your team leaves in 72 hours. "Yes, sir, next assignment." "Where?" "I can't say, sir." Of course she couldn't. People like Eva didn't have normal deployments, didn't follow normal chains of command. They went where problems existed, stayed until problems were solved, then disappeared. The phoenix on her sleeve wasn't just authorization, it was a lifestyle, a calling. "Then I'll say this. It was an honor to serve alongside you, even if I didn't recognize it at first." "Thank you, sir." He left. Eva and Carter walked back to their workspace. The cool air, the smell of ozone, the glow of monitors, home for the moment. Carter started packing their equipment, breaking down the servers, preparing for movement. "You know," he said, "you could have made him suffer, really suffer. That report you filed, that's career-ending material. General humiliates soldier based on gender bias. Refuses to respect authorized insignia. Forces public confrontation. It would have been national news." "I know. So why didn't you?" Eva methodically cleaned her rifle. The same ritual she performed after every mission, each component wiped down, oiled, inspected. The weapon was immaculate, a tool of absolute precision treated with absolute respect. "Because that's not why I filed the report, Ben. I filed it to document truth, to create a record, not to weaponize it. The general made a mistake. He owned it. He apologized publicly. He recognized his error. That's enough. Most people would want revenge." "I'm not most people." She reassembled the bolt carrier group. The metallic click of components sliding together echoed in the quiet room. "Besides, holding grudges is exhausting. I don't have the energy for it. I have work to do, missions to plan, problems to solve. His ego isn't my problem. It never was." Carter shook his head in amazement. "You're a better person than me." "No, I'm just someone who understands what matters and what doesn't. The general's opinion of me doesn't matter. My ability to do the job matters. His comfort with my existence doesn't matter. My team's safety matters." She looked up at him. "We're leaving in 3 days, Ben, onto the next crisis, the next impossible shot, the next time someone doubts what we can do, and we'll prove it again, because that's who we are, that's what we do." She picked up her logbook, a worn leather journal where she recorded every mission, every shot, every detail. It was personal, private, the only place where she allowed herself to reflect. She wrote a single sentence summarizing the operation. Target eliminated at 1974 meters. Convoy saved. Mission complete. No flourish, no drama, just facts. Then she added one more line, a note to herself. A reminder of what she'd learned this week. Dignity doesn't shout. It simply performs. And sometimes the quietest voice carries the furthest. She closed the journal. Tomorrow they would pack. The next day they would brief their replacement team. and the day after they would leave. The Phoenix patch would disappear from forward operating base Archer, become a story, a rumor. Did you hear about the female sniper, the one who took that impossible shot, the one who made the general salute her? Over time, details would blur, facts would become legend, legend would become myth. And eventually, it would just be another tale told in dining facilities and briefing rooms. The story of the small, quiet soldier who wore a patch no one recognized, who faced down a general without raising her voice, who made an impossible shot look easy, who proved that sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't anger, it's excellence, delivered with precision, without apology, without compromise. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And in the acting, says everything that needs to be said.